Hello, and thanks for joining me for session 2 of our training classes. In session 2, we're going to learn about revenue and expense items, automatic payables, quotes, orders, and how to dispatch those orders. Let's start by learning about the ability to categorize your revenue and expense items. In Tailwind, every line item on an invoice or a bill is assigned to a specific revenue or expense item type. These charge types can help you keep track of costs and income more accurately, as well as automate and standardize certain charges. Consistent use of revenue items will make your invoices that much clearer to customers, allowing you to identify all those accessorial charges used in the transportation industry, and can also be useful for auditing and reporting purposes. While Tailwind comes with a small number of default expense and revenue items, these are unlikely to cover all the possible ways you may want to charge your customers, or all the different ways your vendors may decide to charge you. Consequently, you will eventually want to start adding your own expense and revenue items. To do so, navigate to that gear icon in the top right-hand corner and choose Configuration. The menu items appear across the top, and under Financial, you will find both revenue items and expense items. Let's start with revenue items. So, revenue items represent all the different things you might want to charge a customer for, and all the different ways you might want to do so. Clicking on the Revenue Items options under the Financial Configuration menu will bring up a list of your existing revenue items. Again, as I've mentioned, we populated the database with some typical ones like freight charges and fuel surcharge. But now this is your opportunity to create the items you use for invoicing your customers, like accessorial charges. If you're a flat deck carrier, you likely need the ability to charge a customer an accessorial fee for tarping. Or if you carry multiple shipments for a customer, you need the ability to charge that customer extra drop or pick charges. You can use this Create Revenue Item to create those charges that you will be charging to your customer. For example, let's look at one of those TARP charges. You can call it whatever you want to call it. TARP charge, TARP fee, or simply TARP. The difference between the two fields is this is an internal name. This is the description that's going to print on the line item of the invoice to your customer. Once you set it, all you have to do now is create it, and it will populate into your list and be available in a pull down when you're assigning revenue to your invoices or orders. Now, while you can create basic revenue items to use to invoice your customers that are set to custom and custom. Here we can see I've chosen custom and custom. This allows you to populate the actual freight charge or accessorial charge on individual invoices because every one order is different from the next. But we can also have the software determine the freight charge based upon some shipment details. Let's have a look at that. When creating a revenue item that you want to base it on some shipment details, here when you click Create Revenue Item, call it whatever you want to call it. Maybe, let's look at an example of a freight charge by hundredweight. Very common way that we bill our customers in the transportation industry. And to do so, you can now select in this field. These are all of the shipment details that you can tie your revenue item through to. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate down here to hundredweight. If I want to charge by ton, I'll choose weight tons. In this example, I'm showing you hundredweight. This now, because you're tied your unit default As to the hundredweight, you will now tell the software how much per hundredweight that you want to charge. When you create this type of a revenue item, the software will go through. When this is used on an order, the software is going to look at the shipment, look at the weight that you've entered on that shipment, divide it by 100, of course, to get that hundredweight, and then multiply it by 1530 to get your freight charge. So go ahead, create. Let me just cancel out of that for a moment. Go ahead and create your revenue items that you may need for your operations. Let's go ahead and have a look at some expense items now. Again, here under Financial, choosing Expense Items will populate the list. Expense items represent all the types of costs your company is likely to incur as part of doing business, whether it be carrier fees, equipment repair, or insurance costs. They also include any costs associated with personnel, such as commissions for sales reps or payables for drivers. Clicking on the expense items option under the financial configuration menu brings up the list of any existing expense items. And just like our revenue items, you can just click on this button to add any expense item you want to use in your business. While freight brokerage companies may not have an extensive list, asset-based trucking companies will, as it is always good to categorize your expenses, allowing for financial analysis. Things like fuel costs, maintenance costs, insurance costs. Let's look at a few examples here. So, as a freight brokerage company, I would probably want to create an expense item called brokered carrier expense. This is an item that I will use when I farm a load or broker a load out to a carrier partner of mine. Simply creating it will populate it into the list, allowing you to show it in your list. Now you can create all sorts of expense items as I've mentioned. So you simply use this create expense item and put them in, whatever that may be. Insurance, again, insurance costs, maintenance costs, fuel, things like that you will want to use to categorize your expense items. Understand that clear divisions in revenue and expense items will also help you get the most from Tailwind's reporting capabilities. From here, I'd like to segue into those auto payables because they have a lot to do with expense items. Automatic payables allow you to define circumstances in which Tailwind will automatically create a payable for your personnel, whether it's a sales rep earning a commission on every quote or a driver being paid for every mile or every stop. Using automatic payables can save you a great deal of time and also guarantee that payables are assigned consistently throughout the system. The first step to creating auto payables is setting up the expense item here. I'm going to show you a few examples. Let's talk about driver pay. So again, I create the expense item and I might call it driver pay by the mile, whatever you want to call it. If you simply want to call it driver pay, you can do that. Now I can tell the software that I'm going to tie it through to the actual miles driven. So choosing that and then telling the software that I'm going to be paying 50 cents per mile. This will allow the software to go to work for me. There's another step involved here, so hang on. You have one more step to do, but we're going to look at some more expense items here. Sometimes you may want to pay your personnel not based on miles traveled nor stops made, but based on an actual revenue or profit associated with an order, whether it's a commission for a sales representative or a profit-sharing agreement with an owner-operator. Tailwind has you covered, but the corresponding charge type is slightly more complicated to set up. First, To ensure that the expense item is based off a percentage of the value you're going to derive, you will want to set the unit default type to custom. Hang on one second, let me get one ready for you. So this represents that I'm paying someone 10% commission on the revenue of an order. It's here in the unit default type value that I will set the percentage. So it becomes a 10%, of course, 0.1. Now, in the unit rate default type, I can tie it right through to the revenue, the profit. In this case, I'm going to choose revenue. And when I do, I get a window here that shows me all of my revenue items. This is a complete list of my revenue items, allowing me to switch the toggles. Let's turn these off. I can simply switch on the item that I want the revenue to be tied to. So every time I create an order in my software and invoice a customer a freight charge, when I apply this auto payable to a personnel record, it will create a corresponding bill paying that personnel 10% of that freight charge. Let's go and have a look at one based on profit. So I'm simply navigating back to my expense items, and I'm going to show you one that's based on profit. So here I can see that I've called it 15% commission on profit. Again, the two different fields of the name. The top one is internal only. The description is what's going to print on the pay settlement to your commission staff or your incentivized staff. So here is the percentage I'm going to pay, and I've tied it through to the profit. We saw that when you tie something through to revenue, you get a list of your revenue items. When you tie a payable through to the profit, you not only get a list of your revenue items, you also get a list of your payable items that you want deducted from the revenue in order to realize that profit level. So simply switching them on will allow the software, again, if they're switched off, all you have to do is switch your toggle on, will allow the software to, if there's a $1,000 freight charge, but there happens to be a brokered carrier expense of $800, the software will deduct this brokered carrier expense from the revenue, realizing the profit of $200, paying 15% of that as a commission. Let's have a look at one that would be created for an owner-operator, perhaps. So here's one that says 75% revenue split. I've called it owner-operator revenue split. So opening it up will allow you to see, again, it's whatever I want to call it. This is what's going to print on my pay settlement to my owner-operator. The percentage of revenue that I share with the owner-operator and tie it right through to the revenue, ticking those items that you want the owner-operator to share in the revenue with you. Any of these items can be ticked. So that is the creation of the auto payable to be used, and you still have one more step. Telling the software when and in what situation to use it. For incentivized personnel, those sales reps, dispatchers that work on commission, that's going to be done on their personnel records. For drivers, it's going to be done on personnel records. For owner-operators and revenue splitting, it will be done on the owner-operator record. Let's go and have a look at a couple of those so we can see what it looks like here. So I'm navigating to my personnel. I'm going to use Georgia Green as an example. She is a company driver. When I open her record, I can see I have an automatic payable section. Let me throw these in the garbage for us so you can see. Great. So there's nothing there because that is what it's going to look like for you. You will now simply add auto payable, choosing the charge type that you want to use. So in this situation, I'm going to choose 50 cents per mile. Two sections to pay close attention to: the charge type to use and in what situation to use it. So in this situation, whenever Georgia is assigned as the driver on a dispatch, I want the software to pay her 50 cents per mile. Once I fill in those two fields, I can put an ad in. You can use a start date and an end date if you want. They are not necessary. Once I add it in, it will sit here on Georgia's record so that I can always see what auto payables I may have attached to her. Let's have a look at another couple of records here. Let's go to sales rep in my database. John is a sales rep. I pay him commission. Again, let's throw that in the garbage so we can choose a different one so you can see how easy it is. Creating the auto payable is a little bit more difficult. Setting it is not as complicated. You simply choose auto payable, charge type to be used, in what situation. So later in class, you're going to see the ability to create orders. And on orders, you have the ability to track 3 different staff members on every order. You have sales reps, account reps, and booked by. In this situation, I want to pay John every time he is set as a sales rep on the order. All I do is add it, and it appears on his record for us. The last type of auto payable I'd like to go over with you is, of course, your owner-operators. We very often incentivize our owner-operators by revenue splitting. So let's go here to Joe's Trucking. We can see he's set up as an owner-operator. And again, when I open up his record, I've got an auto payable section. Let's throw that in the garbage so that we can see how easy it is to add. Just add auto payable. You get your dialog up here, allowing you to choose the expense item you want to use and in what situation. So I told you in in session 1 about the ability to create vendor records for your owner-operator. And the fact that you have to have a owner-operator vendor record, a personnel record for whoever drives the truck, and an equipment record. So whenever he is the tractor owner on the dispatch, I want to share the revenue with him. I can now add that in, and it appears on his vendor record for me. Now, automatic payables are fairly complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces, and they may not always work together exactly as you expect. Given that, it is recommended that you test any new payable to ensure that it's working as you expect. If you have added a dispatch-based payable for a driver, then try assigning them to a new dispatch. If you have set up a new commission expense for your sales reps, have them create a few dummy orders. Check to make sure the corresponding bill is being automatically generated, and then check to make sure the amounts involved make sense to you. While it can seem tedious to double-check every new auto payable, it can save you from considerable headaches down the line when you discover that one of your drivers is accidentally being paid an hourly wage on each mile, or your sales rep is getting 110% commission on each order. It's much easier to correct a mistake up front than go back and change things after several weeks of operations. And you can always set up one-on-one time with me where I can help you create and use these auto payables. And also, don't forget, let's navigate to the main page and populate up our support documents. So here in this support center, comprehensive learning documents for you, working with revenue and expense items, and setting up automatic payables. Make sure you make use of those documents. They will help you. And as I've said, auto payables are probably the most complicated thing you're going to come up against in Tailwind. So don't hesitate to reach out to the support staff or myself for help when you're looking to do your automatic payables. Now that takes care of the setup of your software. Session 1, we learned about creating our master files and Finishing our company information, session 2. Now we've learned about our revenue and expense items and creation of auto payables. Let's get into the heart of the operation, learning about quotes and orders. After all, that's where you're going to start to make your money. Quotes. A quote is a useful tool for communicating and negotiating with potential customers, as well as for planning your own internal operations. Quotes can be emailed to customers and used to track ongoing negotiation over rates and other shipment details. Once a quote is agreed upon, it can easily be converted into an order. To create a new quote, first select the quote module from your left navigation. A list of any existing quotes will appear. If this is your first quote, this list is going to be empty. Clicking on the Create button on the top left of the list will bring up the Create Quote screen. You will want to start by selecting the customer to whom the quote will be sent. Clicking the customer field will bring up a drop-down menu of all the customers in your database, allowing you to choose the one, or typing the first few letters of the customer's name will filter the entire list out, looking for just those customers that match that, allowing you to choose that customer. The default contacts will flow through from your customer record, allowing you to change any of these details. Maybe John is the sales rep on this quote, so you can change any of these details right here. Now, of course, it's all those dates that you require for quotes, so I'm going to follow up on this in a week. I've issued it today. I've not revised it, so I'll leave that blank. It is effective today, and I don't know, my quotes are good for a month. So let's go and set this for 1 month from today, November 19th. That creates the initial part of the quote. Navigating to the Shipment tab allows you now to start detailing what it is you're quoting on. Here in this pull down is a list of all of those commodity types that you have created in the configuration area, allowing you to choose. Know that you can also freeform any commodity right in there. I'm going to stick with toys for this situation. You can then track a service code, an NMFC class, the miles. If it's hazmat, switch the toggle and put in your hazmat code. The equipment that the customer is asking you to use to move this load. Let's go for a van or some toys. The number of packages. Maybe I'm moving 24 skids. Here in the package types is all sorts of packaging to choose from. We'll stick with skids in this situation. If you want to track dimensions, it can be very useful if you're moving LTL or over-dimensional freight. Of course, the weight, we always want to know how much weight we're moving, and the shipment type. We can do full, LTL, or partial. In this situation, we'll go with a full load. Down here, you have some flags. Perhaps the customer needs this moved in a hot mode. You can switch that flag on if needed. Or if it's moving on a flat deck and it has to be tarped. Now your locations. Where is it you're picking up and delivering to? If the location is already in your record, use existing location. And all of the locations in your database will appear here in this drop down. So let's go ahead and choose toys. So I can choose Toys R Us, and it will populate the address because the record's already been created. Let's throw a pickup date in here. So this is a quote, so I'll make it in the future. Now, where are we delivering to? Very often we need the ability to create a location on the fly. The location is not in our database yet. It's a new place that we're going to deliver to. You can do that by simply populating the details of the location and then clicking Create Location. Let's have a look. So once you put in the details, the company name, the address, the city, all of that information, all you have to do now is click Create Location, and the software will store that location in your database for future use. Once you've filled in all the details, you can now click the Create button at the bottom, which will create the quote and assign a quote number, allowing you, of course, to do some further details. We're only partway through the quote. So here on the Revenue tab is where you're going to start detailing how much it is you're quoting the customer. By adding a receivable, you can now tell the software that you want to charge this customer $3,500. Here in this pull down is a list of all of those revenue items that you have created in your database. So I can go ahead and choose freight charge. If it's FSCable, switch the toggle on. The software will apply fuel surcharge for you. So we can go ahead and create. And now let's add in some fuel surcharge. So adding a receivable, in my pull down, choosing fuel surcharge, there's the software at work for me. It's populated that $3,500 rate. Maybe I'm charging a 3% fuel surcharge. That I spoke to you about the ability to set fuel surcharge schedules to customer records. That fuel surcharge is coming through from a schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose 3%. Let's assume we're getting 3% fuel surcharge. Just populating it into the units, clicking create, the software is going to go to work for you. 3% of $3,500 is $105, giving you a subtotal of $3,605. You can add in as many accessorial charges as needed. Let's go ahead and print this quote so you can see what a quote's going to look like for you. So you can email the quote off to your customer. I'm just going to go ahead and print it here and throw it on the screen for you. So your logo and company information will appear here. That's why it's important to complete that company information. But this is what your quotes will look like to your customers. Now there's some further functions from quotes that we can take care of. While the quote is simply, we can see it's quote 61. The quote is going to just sit on your quote screen, waiting for the customer to accept it or for you to do some more work. Let's have a look at the other functions within a quote. So from a quote, you can post it to a load board. If you use any of the load posting sites out on the internet these days, you can post this load and have the carriers start calling you. You can convert it to an order. One click of a button and it will create that order and save you the data entry time. You can gather carrier rates. While your customer is considering the quote, you can be gathering your carrier rates, your carrier partner rates, quotes for this movement. And then once your customer does accept the quote and wants you to do the load, you can quickly and easily know who you want to award the load to. So let's see how we'd add a carrier rate in here. By being on the carrier rate tab, adding a rate, choosing the carrier that you talk to. So maybe I spoke with 123 Transport. My contact over there happens to be Miles. And maybe Miles told me that it was his quote number 52 and he's going to need $3,200 to move this load. I can also put notes in. Maybe that he'll have equipment there next week. You can go ahead and put that note in because when you click the create button, that note is clearly visible to you on the carrier rates tab. Notes will allow you to track any note in the software. It's really great for visibility among all your users. There are notes attached to every single record that there is in Tailwind. Also note, there is the ability to add attachments. So if this customer sent you an email or a fax for this quote, you may want to actually print it out, scan it in, and attach it to this quote. Last thing to know about quotes is you can edit them at any time using this yellow edit button. All of our edits are in the yellow color. I want to take you to orders next, but first I'd like to point out some useful tools for you with regards to our list views. You've learned by now that each and every module comes with its own list. And we can also see that the information on these list views can be extensive. Every person is different and wants to see different information. So at the bottom of every list, we give you an Active Columns button. Clicking on it will display the list of columns that is available for display on this actual list. Those toggled to green will be displayed, so you have the ability to turn columns on or off depending on what you want to see or according to your preference. Once you have the columns set, know that you can also rearrange columns. Maybe I want to see my customer in the far left column. All I have to do is click on the column heading and drag it into the position I want to see it. I can also expand columns if I want to. Once you have the list you want it to appear, make sure you hit the Save List button over here. Or once you navigate away from this list, your settings will be lost and the list view will return to the default view. And your hard work will be lost in turning columns on and off and rearrange them. In daily use, you can also toggle columns. So for example, if you want to put all orders together for one customer, toggle your customer button, and it's going to arrange them all alphabetically, gathering all the orders together by customer. Or you want to see them by ship dates. Toggle the column, and it's going to organize them in order of pickup date. Okay, let's talk about orders then. Orders are the primary record in Tailwind, the route to which shipments and dispatches are attached. In some cases, you may want to convert an existing quote into an order, but not every company will make use of quotes. And in the case of a recurring customer or a well-known route, it will make more sense to simply create the order directly. To do so, you navigate to your orders list on the left navigation bar and click the Create button that appears at the top of every list. This will start the order creation process. The first step is, of course, to select your customer, and in this pull down will be all of the customers listed, allowing you to set a specific customer reference number if you want, assign it to a specific branch, change the booked by, account rep or sales rep. Once you do that, you can now create the order, which assigns an order number and allows you to detail more information. Of course, we have to tell the software what we're moving, where we're picking it up, and where we're delivering it to. So by clicking on the Add Shipments, you can now detail the shipment. So here in this pull down is all of your commodities, of course. You can freeform the commodity in here just as easy. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose appliances. Let's assume we're moving 35,000 pounds and we want this in a 53-foot flat deck. The number of packages, skids, pieces, whatever your package type is, DIMS, if it's hazmat, any flags that you want to set. Where are you picking it up and where are you delivering it? And again, here in this pull down is a list of all of the locations that have been created in your database. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to choose blue line. We can actually, why don't I just choose the building supply store? That sounds like a good one. We'll set a pickup date. If there is a scheduled pickup time populated in that field, and tick the appointment box. So maybe it's an 0800 pickup time. Populate it and switch this toggle on. If there's any shipper notes, maybe we have to load at door 18. A pickup number. Anything you want to tell the driver about picking up at this location. Now, where is it you're delivering to? Again, you can create a location record on the fly by clicking that plus sign, and it's going to bring you up. Oh, sorry about that. My bad. It's going to bring you up that location creation ability, but you can also simply choose from your pull down. So let's go ahead and deliver to the building supply store number 23 with a delivery date, whatever that might be. Again, delivery notes, ref nums, anything you need to convey to the driver or carrier partner. Now you create, and you've created your shipment details. The very last thing, of course, to setting an order is the revenue. You want to tell the software how much you're charging the customer, because of course this order is going to convert to an invoice. You do not have to set the revenue, but you can by adding a receivable. Here in the pull down, choosing the revenue item you want to use, and setting the rate. Again, if it's FSCable, simply switch this toggle on and click Create, adding in any accessorial charges you may need. Now down here we can see that there's a line item that's been created. We didn't have anything to do with that. These are the expenses that are being created for anyone that has auto payables. You'll recall we looked at John's record. He's a sales rep in my database. This is creating that bill for him. It's showing as $0 right now, but you wait. It will calculate. The software is going to go to work for me and create that payable to John. There we go. I waited long enough for the payable to create. So there's the payable to John, showing $180. That's the 10% of the revenue creating a bill. Now, if you want to add some expenses to the order itself, you can do so. Generally, you'll want to add most expenses, such as driver or carrier pay, toll frees, etc., to a specific dispatch rather than the order. After all, most of the cost of transport happens in the actual dispatch or transportation record. However, some expenses, such as sales commissions or accessorial charges like lumper fees, are best tracked at the order level. These will often be added automatically, as in the case of John, or you can also add them manually simply by choosing Add Bill right here. While this order represents one pick, one drop, you can create multiple shipment orders by simply clicking Add Shipment and detail the second pick or drop. So you do not have to stick with one pick, one drop orders. You can have one order with multiple shipments attached to it. Maybe you're moving multiple commodities for one customer, or maybe a customer has asked you to pick up 100 units of something and deliver 10 to 10 different stores for them. That can be accomplished through adding multiple shipments. All right, going to break for a moment here, take you back into that learning center, because we covered off creating quotes, converting a quote to an order. We just did creating an order. We're going to move into dispatching an order. But I want you to know those articles are all here for you. And I would strongly recommend, because we don't cover it off in basic training, I would strongly recommend you make sure you read Working with Dispatches and Advanced Orders and Dispatching. Once an order is fully set up, the next step will usually be to dispatch it. But let's have a look at what it looks like on our list here. So we can see it was order 150. It's in that purple color. All of your stage colors are listed across the top for you, so you can see that it's unassigned. You need to find someone to move it. Now you can turn these stages off if you want to. If you only want to see your unassigned, partially dispatched, assigned, and in-transit loads, for example, turn your sent to invoicing off and turn your delivered off. Really, what does an ops person care about a delivered order? They've done their job. So turning those off will reduce the number of orders that are in this list for you. So now You may want to dispatch this order. You found a carrier partner if you're a freight brokerage company, or you found some company equipment to move the order. Let's have a look at how we're going to move orders or dispatch them. By opening the order you wish to dispatch, you can now dispatch the related shipments in one of two ways. The simplest way is to simply click on the Dispatch All Shipments button, and this will dispatch all shipments in the list. Alternatively, you can simply click on this dispatch button if you're dispatching individual shipments onto dispatches. If this had multiple shipments listed here, you could dispatch them individually. Doing either of these things will bring up a prompt asking whether it's going on a new, existing dispatch. You'll select new. Existing is in the case of you're throwing some LTL on the back of a dispatch that's already en route. Let's go ahead and choose new. And you should now see an Edit Dispatch screen. Depending on your company default, you should see either the brokered carrier or company truck dispatch type already selected. You can change them. So if you're a freight broker, you're typically going to dispatch onto a brokered carrier. If you're an asset-based trucking company, you'll broker onto a company truck. I'm going to first demonstrate how to dispatch onto a carrier partner. So I'm choosing brokered carrier, and in this pull down will be a list of all carriers I've vetted in my software. So we're going to choose Zippy Transport to move this load for us. Once I can set some flags if I need to, and once I hit save, the software is going to go to work for me, create a dispatch record, assign the trip number to it, and allow me to do some further functions. Different sections of this page will display a route plan. This shows the pickup and delivery locations, as well as a list of the shipments that are being moved. From a dispatch record, you now have the ability to create that load or rate confirmation to send to your carrier. So here under the print button, you have the load confirmation. Let's throw it on the screen so you can see, oh, we haven't added any expenses. Let's cancel that. Because this is moving on a carrier partner, you will of course want to tell the software how much you're paying this carrier. You've negotiated the load with your carrier, and you will now add a bill. And now choosing the vendor that you have arranged to move the load, clicking the Create button, and categorizing your expense. So here on the payable charges, add payable charge, choosing the expense item you want to use, and telling the software how much money you're paying this carrier for moving the load. Now, adding the line in will allow you to show that that's an expense related to that dispatch. Using your breadcrumbs across the top, navigate back to the dispatch, and now you can print the load confirmation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll populate the load confirmation on the screen for you. This is that legal binding contract between yourself and the carrier. This is your PO number to the carrier. It details to the carrier, there's that shipper reference and the pickup note. All of the details that you want to convey to your carrier. Down here, of course, we talked about those loading terms and conditions, and the ability for you to customize them and put in your own verbiage. But every load's different, and every load requires specific load notes. Let's have a look at that. So here on the dispatch record, I can add in a specific instruction by making use of the notes. Adding in a note and ensuring it's a load instruction. I don't know, let's say the driver must scale empty before loading. How's that for a load instruction note? When I create it and print that load confirmation, that instruction is going to be clearly and concisely noted on my load or rate confirmation. It's all about detailing to your carrier how you want them to move the load. All right, just before we talk about all the individual functions on a dispatch record, let's go back and dispatch a load onto a company piece of equipment. So let's close out of this. Let's navigate back to our order screen, finding another unassigned order that we can move. Again, simply open it up using the dispatch all shipments. Now we're putting this onto a company piece of equipment. So ensuring your company truck button is selected. Here in this pull down will be a list of all your tractors that you've created in your database. Choosing the truck that's moving the load, hitting the save button will populate up the dispatch for you, and instead of a load confirmation, you have the ability to email the trip manifest to your driver. Let's throw a trip manifest on the screen for you. So a trip manifest is simply your ability to detail to the driver or owner-operator how you want them to move the load for you. And of course, trip manifests are a little bit different from load confirmations. They don't have to be that legal binding contract anymore, but the trip number will populate right here. Your driver or owner-operator will check their pay settlement sheet when checking for pay on this. It shows the tractor they're using, the fact that they're picking up at Building Supply Store in Seattle, delivering to the Building Supply Store in Riverside, and by putting another load instruction note, it will also print out there. So let's review that again. Add a note. Oops, sorry. There we go. Add a note, making sure it's a load instruction, detailing what information you want to convey through to your driver. Great, we've covered off how to dispatch onto a carrier partner and how to dispatch onto a company truck. Let's look at all the different functions that are available to us here on dispatch records. So we can assign trailers that happen to be moving the load. We can assign drivers that are moving the load. Not as necessary for freight brokerage companies out there. Once we assign those, we will hit the save button so that the software can commit those changes for us. And we can also calculate miles. So over here we can see that these miles are set at 0. As soon as I click wait, let's go down here. You see how Georgia Green's pay is automatically calculating? But it doesn't know what to calculate yet because we haven't calculated the miles. You'll recall earlier in this class we set Georgia Green up to be paid 50 cents per mile when she is the driver on a dispatch. So let's go ahead and calculate the miles. They're going to populate right up here into the miles section for us. There we go. It's 1,193 miles to move from Seattle down to Riverside, California. And if we're lucky, we're going to see some automatic payables calculating here. It might take a moment for these expenses to calculate for you, but don't worry, the software is working in the background for you. When Georgia or the carrier partner calls in and says, I'm all loaded at the Building Supply Store, you can simply mark some flags that will note that the driver has picked up. If you want to track loading times or unloading times, you can do so. Maybe Georgia got in there at 8 o'clock, but she didn't get out of the Building Supply Store until 11:30. Just by putting that information in there and hitting the save button, the software will show you always how long it took for you to load at that facility. This, marking the pickup facility as arrived and departed, will now move this into an in-transit movement. Let's go ahead and have a look at that. So this is dispatch 129, and it's moving order 151. So on the order screen, if I look at my order 151, it's now in that gray in-transit color. And on the dispatch screen, there it is. It's in transit. It's moving on my company truck 200 with Georgia Green as the driver, and it's in the teal in transit color. Let's go back into that dispatch now and talk further about some functions here. You can add in notes, tracking notes. Georgia Green might call in and tell you that she's all good in Portland, Oregon, or Eugene. You can add those notes in. Tracking notes are visible to all users in the software. Let's see if there's Georgia Green's pay calculating. So there's the auto payables at work for you. Once you deliver the order by marking these flags at the last location, the software is going to do something for you. It's going to pick up this related order and it's going to move it over to the administration side of the software. The last thing a dispatcher or an ops person will do with a dispatch, once they've audited, edited it, ensured they've delivered the goods, they will complete the dispatch, which will again pick up the related expense and move it over to the administration side of the software. Administration is all covered off in session 3 of our training. Now you can see we've got some buttons here, switch and drop. Those are more complicated functions of the dispatch record and covered off in our advanced orders in dispatching and working with dispatches. Great, that covers off the session 2, the operations side of our software. I thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.